So let's start maybe right now. First of all, thank you very much for joining me to this webinar. I mean, I'm very blessed to be together with some very distinguished panelists today. Embellie Advisory has developed a series, two series of webinars actually since the beginning of the COVID crisis. The first one was is developing on issues of best practices and sustainability in the mining sector. So we've done a series of webinars on social performance, on community consent, on interactions with indigenous communities and others. We're more than happy to share any links and the videos and recording of those webinars. But today we actually part of the second series that we have developed, which is a country analysis. More specifically, a country analysis that is looking today at Peru after the fact that we looked at Ecuador last month. We tried to provide our networks of investors and practitioners with the latest information on some of the countries that are obviously very interesting to follow, and Peru is definitely one of those countries, not only because of the current presidential elections. We're in between the two rounds of the elections, as obviously most of you know, but also because of the importance of the mining sector today and the existing reserves for additional investment in the future. Peru has been, for the last few decades, definitely leading the pack of mining jurisdictions in terms of potential for gold mining, in gold and copper, in battery metals and others. And for me, it's really a pleasure to be accompanied by a series of panelists, as I was mentioning, you know, from Francisco Ismodes, former Minister of Energy and Mines, Director of Foromin today, but also with us is Jose Carlos de Pierola from the Inter-American Development Bank, Javier de Rio from Hudbay Minerals, definitely one of the well-established mining companies in Peru, especially with the Constancia project, Arturo Ruiz from the Peru-Canada Chamber of Commerce, and Ramon Huapaya from CMS Grau. And obviously, you know, last but not least, Fiorella from Embellie Advisory, who oversees Peru, but also Ecuador in Colombia is joining us. And we hope to be able to provide you with more information on Peru, what to expect in terms of future investment in the mining sector, but also of the current political situation. I will, you know, without further ado, probably, you know, turn to Fiorella first. That will help me, you know, set the stage for this webinar and provide us, you know, probably the main information in terms of the current elections and the importance of the mining sector in the country. Just before maybe you start, Fiorella, I just want to encourage any of our attendees to ask any questions in the chat. We want this to be as interactive as possible, and being able therefore to provide some more context or answer some of the questions to especially investors that would be looking at Peru, and we need to be reassured with the current political situation. Fiorella, please, thank you very much for joining us, and please, can you maybe help me, as I said, set the stage on the current elections and the mining sector in the country?
Of course, thank you, Remy. Well, hello everyone. It's a pleasure to me to be able to share this moment with you, and especially to be part of this panel with great professionals. Currently in Peru, right now is the second electoral round between the candidates Pedro Castillo and Keiko Fujimori, and day by day we see in the news that this situation really generates uncertainty in citizens and also for investors. Well, let's hope that it will be the best option for the Peruvian country. Sorry. Well, Peru is currently appreciated internationally for the geological mining potential. However, this is not necessarily the most determining aspect when we decide to carry out an investment. It's also necessarily transparency, clear process that this determines the investment decisions. For example, mining contributes to growth, economic development. There is a significant percentage of the GDP. It's 9.9%. It represents mining, which is quite a lot, and also for exportation, which is around 60%. So mining investment is portfolio in the country. Right now, the last announced from the ministry was 56 billion in the portfolio, which is quite interesting. And most of these projects would be copper, and also in production is also interesting how it's growing with zinc, silver, iron, tin. So Peru has many diversity about minerals. Also, the investors, we usually have some meetings with them, and they are quietly concerned about the projects that are delayed by opposition from communities, which is somehow sometimes it's really hard for investors, and because they have many conflicts, and this might arise when the use of land and mining saving competition. A few days ago, I heard some words from the Minister of Production, which were quite interesting. He said, for example, the mining is not just about generating income. It contributes that just contributes the country GDP. Mining has to be sustainable, has to be inclusive, and also has to go for innovation. And with that, I think I can turn to Remy to continue with this.
I do appreciate this, and definitely, I mean, our objective here is trying to see comprehensively what has been the latest steps and latest reforms in Peru, and try to share best practices in terms of sustainable investment. I think maybe the best way to move forward now would be to turn to Francisco Ismodes. Francisco was, as I was mentioning, Minister of Energy and Mines until I think a year and a half ago, if I'm not wrong. And I think that the best thing would be to maybe ask you, Francisco, about the latest reforms and the situation for investors in Peru. What has been done in the country, and how can you maybe help us brush a comprehensive view of the mining sector in Peru?
Thank you, Remy and Fiorella, for the invitation to share some information in this webinar. I would like to refer to some initiatives that we have been working for the last years, and I think that these initiatives are very important to understand what is happening with this mining sector, that as we know is very important for our country. And there are various reports and studies that confirm some reasons for the problems that the mining sector is suffering for the last years. As we saw in the last elections results, in the territories where are mining activities with very important companies working in these territories. The results of the elections give us some idea of how these people feel about the mining sector, and this resume the problems that we saw for many years, like high levels of poverty in these areas where mining takes place, also a low level of local employment, a poor investment of the resources generated by mining sector, unused resources that are returned to the public treasury, low level of communications of the different actors involved, especially the national government. For instance, in relation to the requirements that formal mining must meet to start its activities. Also low level of communications about the progress of mining and social projects, among other uninformed aspects. Also, we have to mention the impact of small informal miners without adequate environmental controls and without contributing to the development of the territories where it is carried out, among others. That matters give us an idea of what is happening in about or around these mining activities. For this reason, I would like to share with you what we started to work in the Ministry of Energy and Mines from 2018. We prepared a proposal that want to respond all these challenges that we call the virtuous circle for the promotion and good use of mining and energy resources. The idea of this virtuous circle was to understand what all the matters about the problems that we have to fix to go ahead with this important activity in Peru, no? And we can mention 5 axes that we start to work, no? For instance, the well-being and development of regions with mining activity, no? That gather the following topics: promote with the public sectors social projects and generate good conditions for the development and closing of social gaps in education, health, employment, electrifications, among others. Other thematic axes that we have to work is about decentralization and institutional strengthening, like mining management committees who could work with the local communities and local actors to show how to build trust with them. No? That is very important that they understand all the matters around the mining sectors. No? It's important, these mining management committees are very important to promote the regional dialogue and articulation with other public sectors for the different social projects that are development in those territories. Also important to work in environmental sustainability, promote the remediations of environmental liabilities, promote its reuse of to generate incomes for its remediation. Also, the proactive role in compliance with environmental regulation. This also is very important to work in this environmental sustainability for this continuity and to advance of this important mining sector. Also, the promotion of good practices in mining. We have to show how these good practices in mining are improved constantly. For that, we created the RIMAI. RIMAI is the Center of Convergence and Good Energy and Mining Practices, which in February 2019 achievement by consensus between different stakeholders of mining sector a proposal for a vision of mining to 2030. Also, we have, I can talk or I can share about the promotion of investment with competitiveness and sustainability. It was also important to attend to the competitiveness of the sector. For this, we work in some initiatives as the Executive Mining Energy Table to discuss with the private sector the necessary improvements in the regulations, also the promotion of mining formalization, the simplification of procedures and digital window, and to create a mining policy. And as a result of this idea of a mining policy, was created the Commission of Sustainable Mining Development, which issued a final report was made public in February 2020. And all these initiatives give some ideas of what we have to continue working to improve the performance of the mining sector with all the benefits that our country needs from these mining activities. But the problem that we can see, we can understand, is that the new authorities, the change of the authorities, they always they don't advance many times in these initiatives and go back, or it's lost. And that is something that we have to work to give continuity to these initiatives that are very important to improve the performance of the mining sector.
And I maybe just as a follow-up to this question, and I know we discussed on preparing this webinar on the Vision 2030. I think it's obviously the link between the mining sector today and the current election is very clear. When you look at the result of the first round, Castillo got his best result usually in mining jurisdictions, in mining regions. I mean, that we can understand is the case in Cajamarca because it's originally from Cajamarca, but also when you look at Apurímac, when he actually made extremely high scores, what could be done to try to express and explain the positive aspects of mining? How can we actually explain this rejection from communities and voting for a candidate that is ostensibly anti-mining?
I think that is very important, the communication, and also to show the communities, the local communities, that the problems, that the poverty problems or the gaps of education and health is not necessary because the mining is not generate incomes. The money exists, the budgets exist. The problem is that the public authorities, they are not using in good way this money, and many projects are stopped in social projects. And we can see in the last years, for instance, in 2019, we see a lot of millions of soles go back to the national treasury. And we see, for instance, hospitals with 90% in bad conditions. The same with schools. But the money is go back to the public national state with the national authority. Mm-hmm. And the people didn't know about that. No, it's very important to explain to people that they have to involve, the students, university students. They have to involve, for instance, university students. They have to involve to improve this manage of these incomes of these budgets, and also it's important to planification of the development of these territories. And I think that this is the way to improve the relationship between the mining activities and the local communities and also local authorities.
Thank you. Maybe turning to Jose, because I know, Jose, you were, as we work with IADB, you were part of this definition of trying to, set the stage towards the next steps of the mining sector towards 2030 and a series of integrated series of inclusive objective. Can you maybe, tell us a bit more about the vision from the IADB of the Peruvian mining sectors and the kind of latest reforms that were made into in the country?
For framing, and thank you for inviting me to this spot and to have this performance with this tremendous panel. Well, I have to say I will give my personal opinion. I mean, which doesn't represent what the Inter-American Development Bank thinks or developed. But I can tell you about what we are doing and how the bank is contributing to the mining sector and to the initiatives that currently the Ministry of Energy has. And it's important to mention that the work performed by former Ministry Francisco Ismodes start this support and gave the opportunity to go in a next stage for RIMAI, which is happening currently, and this is like public information, but it's important to tell you how is developing and what are the challenges we identify in this approach. Sorry.
Yeah, we lost you on the video.
Yeah. Sorry, I had a call. I'm with my phone because the signal in Lima is really bad, and I prefer to use my phone to do this kind of presentations. So to go to the point, the bank is developing with the leadership of the Ministry of Energy and Mining the next stage of the what we call the territorial dialogue, and this is focused on two regions which are very important for the investments in Peru, in the mining areas particularly. We are talking about Moquegua, which has one major project called Quellaveco for Anglo American, but also has a big story of mining, which with Southern Peru Copper Corporation, and now currently there are two more projects that are ongoing. I mean, they are in the process to start, which are one from Buenaventura and the other one from Hampton. If I don't have a bad memory. So what is been happening there is trying to have this call to all the actors. So as it happened with RIMAI in the first phase, it's important to have all the statements of who has to deal and who has to discuss about how the mining activities contribute to development, because the objective, the goal, is to build around the regional development, and some of the things that Francisco was saying are really like kind of sad, but it's important to understand what's going on. Why the returns of the tax income to the national treasury, why it's not spent in a good way, why it's not spent. I mean, 40% of the total in the last 10 years hasn't been spent. And I am talking about the canon and realias, for example. And it's important to understand how it's that happening and why it's happening. So part of the dialogue is this, because we are looking at the pain points. What are the pain points for the region, for the locals? What they think about the mining sector, how it's contributing to their own lives, not at the macro economy level, but at the microeconomy level, which is the most important at this moment. So, and this is what's going on currently in Moquegua, and we'll finish in the following months. It's important. It will be a document. I mean, similar to the mining vision for Peru, but for Moquegua, with a long-term view and trying to take all the concerns that the people has. And for example, I mean, and this is something that is similar to what happened for Peru. For Moquegua, you have they are concerned about the value chain around the mining sector. They are concerned about the water and natural resources, what's going on with this. They are concerned about how you are managing the canon and the resources coming from the mining sector. And those are challenges for the region, which were identified at first in the mining vision for Peru. But it's important to take away this perception from the local people. And this is currently it's possible that it's going to happen in Cajamarca as well. Cajamarca is also a mining region, really important in the next in the following years for Peru. I mean, it's like 33% of the potential investments that you for the mining areas. So and you have like 4 main projects there. So, but it's what I think it's necessary to do is to listen to the locals, listen what is the concern and what are their plans on their region, how they think, how they visualize what's going on in the following years for the region. And from this point, then you can say, okay, so for your vision, how you think the mining sector can contribute. So and this is another approach, right? It's not let's go with the mining activities and develop from to another space from the mining. It's from the development and how the mining can contribute to that. And this is working pretty well. And we had a lot of commitment from locals, local institutions. We have the private sector involved, which is really important, and other colleagues like the IFC and so on. They are interested in this process.
Yeah, I think what you're mentioning is really essential. I mean, I'm going to turn to Arturo very soon, but we've been able over the last few months, thanks to Global Affairs Canada and Devonshire Initiative, we actually organized a round of conversation between mining companies and communities. And the whole idea here was obviously that the Cañón Minero, the series of the royalties were often not spent or often not dedicated to projects that really were requested by communities, and the whole idea is to be able to try to find those spaces for cross-sectoral collaborations of moving the wealth from the mining sector towards an economic diversification of the territory itself, so that it doesn't look like mining is taking over the entire future of the territory, and it's also including elements and desires from the communities. All these that we've seen in other countries is now starting to get implemented in Peru. So I'm personally more confident in the future, into the midterm in Peru, in terms of trying to find a social license to operate around key projects, because those elements and best practices from Canada and other countries are starting to be really much implemented in a series of spaces. Arena, you mentioned the one you're doing with IFC in Moquegua. Others I mentioned, the Devonshire Initiative. There's really a space here to try to make some progress and really make sure that whatever the outcome of the elections will be, that you will see for communities the real impact of the mining investment for their well-being and the development in their region, of not only mining related activities, but also from part of the agribusiness or part of the of other sectors that could benefit from the knowledge shared by the mining sector. And since I mentioned already, Canadian best practices, maybe I think the best way is to transition to you, Arturo. I mean, Arturo is the president of the Peru-Canada Chamber of Commerce. Can I maybe ask you, maybe for our audience, to explain the links existing between Canadian investment and Peru, and who are the main actors, and maybe share some ideas on the best practices that we've seen trickle down to Peru from Canada.
Oh yes, certainly, Remy, and thank you so much for inviting me to this amazing webinar. Thank you as well, Fiorella, for contacting me. Regarding the investment from Canada, facts, we have 15 companies listed in the Toronto Stock Exchange that invest in Peru. We have 43 companies listed in the Toronto Stock Exchange venture capitals operating in Peru. So this is close to 60 companies that they have the best practices in Canada, and they really are attractive to go to a country like Peru. Certainly, the new tendencies is not only to go and explore the minerals, the tendency is to make sure the community is fully involved. In Canada, there are many examples how prosperous the community around the mines are. Actually, when a mining company start operations, all the towns around that mining, they are really jumping and they want to attract more. In the US, we got this state, Nevada. They are doing great jobs also to attract investment in the mining. Mining represents, like any country, a big part of the GDP. So that's what the communities look for, what the government look for. What investors are looking in these days is not only to go and invest and make money on the investment and the mining, they also want to contribute socially and especially to the environment. It's becoming more and more crucial, ESG, to all levels of organizations. Certainly to the highest level, they are hiring executives, vice presidents or senior vice presidents, just to focus on ESG. So we need to take, as an investor, we need to take care about the environment, and we need to take care about the social communities around those mines.
Maybe using this as, I mean, we're talking about investment from Canadian companies. I mean, I'm going to be talking about Hudbay Minerals just after with Javier. But have you seen, you know, with a series of companies, you know, such as, you know, Barrick or others, and as you mentioned, you know, a lot of juniors are operating in the in Peru today. Have you seen a rise in those numbers, or a rise of concerns, Arturo, in terms of Canadian investors towards Peru, or some of the best practices developed in Canada? I'm thinking about, for example, some works with indigenous communities that have been, you know, developed in Canada, that now is, you know, has been working in collaboration with other companies in Peru in terms of exchanging experiences. Is that something that you're seeing on a regular basis, so that you can actually underline, Arturo? Arturo? Oh, I think you're on mute, Arturo. In case of
sorry, my apology. Yes, from the companies that I see that are going to Peru, they are looking just to expand, and things that are really clear is Peru is a country that has only less than 1.5%, and Francisco can correct me, that either the resources are exploited or being explored. So that's a huge market, that's a huge opportunity. And the current trade between Peru and Canada is around 2.5 billion. 75% of that trade correspond to metals. So yes, companies are really interested in investing in Peru. Did I answer the question, or you wanted?
You did, and by the way, I'm just using the opportunity to remind the attendees, if you want to ask a specific question to some of our panelists, we're more than happy to address it and be able to bring you answers if you have a question regarding Peru. But I'd like maybe to turn to Javier right now. I mean, I had the chance to spend most of my December in Peru, from from Apurímac to Chumbivilcas, where the Constancia project is, to Arequipa. Can you, because of your experience on that project, Constancia is probably one of the longer standing mine in Peru. Can you explain us how it is to operate in Peru? What have been your successes or difficulties over the last few months, and maybe your experience as a mine operator in the country?
Well, thank you for your question. Well, we operate in Chumbivilcas, which is a very remote area, and this is the point of view of a miner. Okay, I don't know much about anything else other than just mining. So, like I said, we operate at a very remote location, 475 kilometers away from the port of Materani, at 41 meters above the sea level in elevation, 4,100 meters. So it's important to understand that Peru is a great country, a country with a great wealth of minerals, such as gold, silver, copper, zinc, and lead, placing us in the first places of production in Latin America and the world. So our mineral reserves are far from being exhausted. So we are, and we will continue to be a mining country for a long time to come. Okay, that's important. So mining is not new in Peru. We are blessed by the Andes Cordillera and the different belts exist in our territory. Everybody knows that without ore body deposits, it is very difficult for mining to exist, right? If there are no minerals, if there are no ore body deposits, unlikely to be mines, okay? So, as a Hudbay, we pay, for us, it's extremely important to participate in the local economy, okay? And there is a lot of turmoil, a lot of noise about local elections, etc. And we need to understand that mining represents 10% of the national GDP, something we must bear in mind. So any political situation, in any political situation, mining is a central point of debate. But in a country like Peru, due to its socio-cultural characteristics, it is difficult to change this situation. Mining will always represent a big chunk of the Peruvian economy, okay? So for us, we made the decision to invest in Peru back in 2012, and we were building a project of $1.7 billion, right when Humala was elected. Everybody was nervous, of course. Okay, oh, this is a leftist government. Well, guess what? We finished this project in less than 30 months. We finished the construction of this project in less than 30 months. We ramped the project up in 4 months. One of the characteristics is that we have a great workforce, skillful workforce, hard workers, very committed. Okay, so those are things that, as a Canadian company, we really take it at core in our heart.
Yeah, I think you're making two very good points, maybe, and first of all is the importance of the mining sector itself is so important that even when you have a candidate that arrives to the position of president or just to the second round that arrived with a platform of potential nationalization of the mining sector, which, by the way, he actually moved off of, they often arriving in power change their position because of the importance that it has for the economic sector. Right now, we're seeing, obviously, in terms of the latest poll, Keiko Fujimori catching up with Castillo, and if that continues, she likely will be the president afterwards. But even if it was not to be the case, all the populistic, campaign that we've seen in the past, whether it was from Olata Humala or others, when they actually arrived to the position in Lima, seeing the importance of the mining sector and the capacity to bring development in the country, they tend to not, to modify the original position, and therefore that tends to make us believe that the warning signals or the fear that we've seen among investors are a little bit more overvalued and exaggerating, because when it will come to actual situation and decision, then we will not see those being implemented. You also mentioned something I think that we should understand, is that Peru has a long history of mining, and the workforce is extremely good in mining, in the mining sector. That's probably not the case in other countries. I'm not criticizing, maybe Ecuador, Colombia have less of a history of minings, and when it comes to finding very strong professional, whether at the senior level, but even at the very entry level, the capacity of Peru to have trained with universities actors and with different companies a very strong workforce is really an asset for the country. But if I can continue on the question, Javier, before turning to Ramon, when we're looking at Chubivilcas especially, because that's where your main operation is located, how do you work with communities in Chubivilcas? How do you work with local political actors in Chubivilcas? And have you been able to try to trickle down the benefits of mining to the population because of your history in the region?
Okay, I'm not in mute. Okay, we've been mining since we built the project up until 2014. We ramped it up in 2015. From 2015 on, we've been producing. So it's 2021, and so far, I'm not saying this has been a walk in the park, okay? But what I could say is we have extremely good relationship with our communities, our province, and our districts. There are some hiccups, like as in anyone else. For instance, we know now that there are 5 representatives for Congress in Cusco being elected.
Mhm.
So we have already been trying to establish engagement to show them what's mining about. Sometimes there is misinformation. So we also bring the multi-stakeholder, multi-actor approach, okay, which is not only Hudbay investing, but bringing more investing, bringing funding through different mechanisms. And this is part of the best practices. You have work for taxes, you have the technical assistance, we can shape a vision, you work through local procurement, local employment, and all of these within the utmost respected environment.
And you mentioned the environment. That actually brings me my perfect transition to Ramon, because Ramon, you've been working on environmental licensing and licensing of mining project for CMS Grau for a little while now, and we've discussed needed reforms for the mining sectors for the next few years. Can I maybe ask for your expertise of what should be those reforms, including to the specifically the in the mining sectors over the next few years, so that we see more investments and therefore more wealth to be trickled down to the community?
Yes, hi Remy, thank you to Embellie for the invitation. Thank Fiorella also and all the panelists. Well, I think we can split this question into sections. I think that we need at first, my personal point of view is that even if I don't know, we are in an uncertainty scenario for the winning of the election, but I think that building changes should be a midterm process, because I think that they have to think about what they're going to change eventually in the constitution and in the economic part of the constitution. No? I know it's a task that should be very well. It has to be very well think it in order to go to that change. But in the regulatory aspects of the mining sector, I think that we should split the question in two, because I think that we need more reforms in the procedural aspects of the mining sector. I think the structure of the business remains as well, but in the regulatory procedures, I think that there is a bottleneck. It's a bottleneck in the procedures. Recently, the last year, they were made some reforms in the exploration sector, yes, and even with the application of the silencio positivo in the mining sector. I think it was a very well thinked reform between the Minister of Energy and Mines and also of the stakeholders in the business. But I think we need to do a microengineering process to detect that bottlenecks in the regulation and to solve that bottlenecks. And it's time to build up confidence in the sector. I think that the mining sector is growing. Is even what it had like a so years, but now it's starting to go up well. I think that we need changes in the procedures, but specifically in the administrative procedures. I think that we have to regain the confidence to the original intention of the general law of mining, which is to guarantee the right to the legal certainty to the investors in the administrative way of things. Of things. That is one side of the question. But the other side, I think we need a revolution in the public sector, the public administration, because the state changed in front of our eyes. The state changed in front of our eyes, and we have made a lot of entities in the permitting process. A lot of entities, like you have the SENACE, you have the UEFA, you have the Minister of Environment, you have Diana, you have the CERNAM, you have CERFOR, you have a lot of legal entities in Peru that they tend to act in their own way. There is not so much coordination between them, and we need to specifically labor the principle of coordination between the authorities. You know, there is a general integrated authorization you have the integrated authorization, environmental authorization, but there is one attempt to build a principle of ventanilla única, which is it's the goal that we need to achieve, but it's a change in the coordination, it's a change in the public sector to secure legal certainty. Because I think that in the recent years, the administration is not going so well during the tramitation of the procedures. We need more legal certainty, we need more stability in order to have a predictable result. I think that is the way.
Yeah, Fiorella, actually, I think Ramon is making a good point on the variety of institutional actors that are involved into the process of validating projects. I mean, we've worked and we did a webinar recently with you on the topic of consulta previa, for example, which is so important in Peru, where the rules that are being established, or at least we've seen different steps being implemented in terms of being able to support mining companies into the licensing of their projects or moving forward on their project. But it's true that we keep hearing from investors that it's a complex process, even for company to understand how to work with MINEM or with different actors such as SENACE, OANA, like Ramon was saying. Could you maybe just give us your expertise on this complexity of working with administrative actors, and what would be the best practices, especially for consulta previa?
Sure. Well, yeah, as you said, on my expertise, when I was at the Ministry of Mines, I saw how hard for the companies was to pass this process or prior consultation. It's long and it has many stages. It's different in every country in South America. In Peru, it has their own regulation, and it's in charge of a special area of the Ministry of Mines. And sometimes the companies ask, why does it take so long, this process? Because sometimes it takes 1 year. I saw some process that they're still on, and it's maybe 2 years, which is quite a lot for investments, and also for exploration, because we know exploration, it doesn't mean such an impact. So it doesn't have to be so long. So that's the difference sometimes that the ministry or this area has to know, this kind of difference between an exploitation or an exploration project. Well, one of the job that I did at the ministry was to follow all these process of prior consultation from the projects. I saw some of them had some social issues. Some of them had just administrative part. For example, to go to the area, the places, and that's what all takes this time. We recently did a great job presenting the ministry a guide so they could know how to to make this process with objective criteria, with more information. It will be in order, and it will take easy for them to make it. So what I always say to the companies when I talk with them is, don't be afraid of this process of prior consultation. If you know really how to do it, if you know how to pass it, then it wouldn't take so long. So you just have to be very focused on this process, because it's very special. We are talking about indigenous communities. They have their own rights, and we have to know that indigenous communities is not like for example for us. They have the collective rights, and they have to know how to talk with them, to communicate with them. So prior consultation is one of the processes that has some of the projects ask for it, some of them not. It's only about if they're very close to the indigenous communities, maybe they will ask for this. But as I said, don't be afraid of it. If you know how to pass it, then it won't be any problem.
Yeah, I might just follow up on this and ask you another question. I also see that we have interesting questions on the QA, one from Hernan and one from Augusto. I think I asked the one from Hernan to Francisco, the one from Augusto to Jose. But on that question specifically, on the time that it takes to pass the certification from MINEM, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is because of the list of projects that are basically lining up for that validation, there is a possibility for different mining companies, especially at the exploration stage, to start doing the work ahead of time, to start doing the baseline studies, to provide some of the content to the ministry, so that it actually helps them go faster. And if you're able to actually engage with the community, if you're able to do a lot of the work that is required either for the EIA or for the consulta previa, you can actually fast track some of your projects if it's presented in the right way to MINEM. Am I correct saying this, or I mean, you have more experience?
Well, yeah, it's totally legal. It's fine. We know that the ministry is in charge of consulta previa, prior consultation. We have to always be sure about it. The company, what they can do is to work in the information. Still, it will be very useful for them, because they will know how many indigenous communities are around, or either if the project is gonna affect their collective rights. So it's always just useful. And that information that they construct, which is from specialists, they can present to the ministry, and they will review it, they will check it, and if it's a good information, maybe they will use it as any other process. You can always present your information, additional information, and if they say that it's good information, they might use it. Yeah.
Yeah, Peru is definitely one of the countries that if you actually are proactive into the licensing process, or into the engagement with communities, you can actually get certain reward, specifically in terms of the timeline that it takes. So I mean, there's a good way to try to reduce those timeline by being proactive, of engaging with communities, of engaging with a series of the requests from the ministry. And that is also a good way, when you engage ahead of time, obviously with the different stakeholders, with different communities, to build trust with them, to not give the impression that you are about to develop a project, but because of the time that it takes at MINEM or a different organization to pass the paperwork, therefore you tend to build wrong relation with the communities that are expecting the projects, or are able to build an opposition to it without seeing the steps towards development of the territory. And I'm kind of liaising here with a question from Hernan and turning to Francisco. That question of trust among stakeholders between communities and enterprise. I mean, maybe that it would be interesting here to mention the work that has been done by Foromin Masde, for example, which is the idea of seeing the mining community and the mining investment together with the element of local development and sustainable development. Can you maybe just give us the perspective of the work of Foromin Masde, Francisco, and explain how that helps building trust among stakeholders, obviously more efficient than changing the constitution?
Sure. Thank you, Remy. Yes, after I left the ministry, I understood that the initiatives carried out with great effort, really, by an entire team, were most of them funding or were achieved. As Jose Carlos mentioned, it's important to put attention in that the RIMAI, it is true that it has continued with a good job to show this vision of the mining sector to 2030. But this is not common. And also with this current ministry about this RIMAI support, we have to mention that it is very important. And the before ministry also support this RIMAI initiative. But as Jose Carlos know, in some period of the Ministry of Mining, this initiative was stopped. And that's why the idea of Foromin plus D, Foromin, started is because we have to make visible all these important things for the mining sector. This new vision, also the needs that the presence of the mining sector, the national authority of the mining sector, to have presence in the mining territories are very important because the companies, most of them, are working with the really good practices. But it's necessary that the government, the National Mining Authority, accompany these companies in that territory, because not necessarily exists a trust between the company and the community or social spaces. It's necessary that the presence of the government to act as to generating trust in the complying all the compromises and obligations of the company, and also the obligations of the state. Many of some agreements, some compromises that the state has with these communities, the state are not complying. And it is important to show all this in these territories, all this information. Because of that, for me, plus D is to want to share with local actors and with some audiences this information about the activities of the mining national sector have to comply with this all these territories, and also to show these good practices, also that opportunities that to improve these good practices that we have, and how these incomes who came from the mining sector are improving the local development, and how the authorities have to also improve their management of these incomes. This is the idea of the Foromin plus D. Is some of them is to have some photos with some local audiences. We started with university students, and then we work with smaller companies, local companies, to explain some aspects about to their improve of their performance as companies and services. And also we want to work giving information and knowledge to the smaller miners or small miners to also to help them for this formalization and also to improve their environmental standards and to understand that they are part of a sector also. No, because if they are not working in good way, the people, the citizens understand that they are part of the mining sector, and that's why all persons that are working in the mining sector also have to work in these improvements in these practices of these small miners. Also, it's important that the knowledge that was created by years, but most of this knowledge is not visible. They are in some place, but if you go to the internet and you look for some information, maybe appears some information from 10 years ago, no current information, no, like the taxation, current taxation, some money or some budgets that are going to some local authorities or regional authorities. And that's important to show this information in a systematic way. No? And this is also a part of this Foromin plus D. If you go to inside of our website, you can find this information with some order, with some systematization to can understand and to know this the most information of the mining sector. And also we are working to try to initiate a project to involve the students. No, the students, university students, have to be part of the improve or the develop of the territories. And now we are working with them with all this knowledge, but really most of them wants to be part of this work, and we have to organize with some institution to help them and with their universities how they can be part of the development of that territory with these mining resources. And because I can repeat, it's not enough all the effort that the companies are doing. It's not enough for that really improve, you know, and reduce all these gaps in social, as education, health, etc. As in these sad times of this pandemic of COVID, we suffer in that way, in most clear way, all these gaps, and for that it is important to work with these actors, with these local students, with the companies, and with the local authorities in the planification of this development. I think that this is one of the most important things that we have to accompany in this improvement of the performance of the sector.
No, I think you're making some great points, especially on the need to include other actors, whether it's university actors. I mean, we hear about UN agencies that might, just rejoin the discussion of bringing social development through, the mining sectors. The idea here is obviously with the gap in trust And I'm going to bridge also to Jose Carlos on issues, especially of water and water management, which is a key issue for communities and one of the main reasons why the population has been opposing mining sector in different regions and backing one presidential candidate against other. The question here is, how do we actually build those technical dialogue, Jose Carlos, on issues such as water, on issues of green powering of mines, the question of Augusto on the agreement between NG and Quellaveco for the powering of the mine, and therefore showing the commitment of the mining actor to climate change mitigation, or at least limiting its impact on climate change, is essential to try to make the point of the fact that there are clear work on better management of water, better management of energy, and limiting the negative externalities of a sector that is, those issues that are the deep roots of the lack of trust between communities and mining companies on a series of projects. So maybe if I can, turn to you, Jose, and get a better sense of how, especially on Moquegua, as you mentioned in that area, how you work on putting together technical groups to improve the performance of mining actors, and how do you participate in the communication towards different communities for them to be part of the understanding of what are the impact of the mining sector on their own territory. And you're on mute, Jose Carlos, just in case of.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, this is a key question, and it's a key topic as well. Climate change is a fact, and energy transition as well. So an energy transition will require a lot of mining. So we can't deny that it's mining necessary. And as Javier explained a few minutes ago, Peru is a mining country, and we need to develop a mining. And then that's why we need to start looking at the pain points. What are the pain points of the mining issues? And one is water, as you mentioned. So and how to tackle the water issues. It's not easy. It's very particularly hard, because it could be you can have an approach from the social perspective, which is really important, is part of the solution, and needs to be attained and discussed. And you need the civil society, you need the private sector, you need the academy, as Francisco mentioned, but and the public sector as well. But and in the other side, you have the technical approach, which is I won't say it's easier, but there's a facts that you can deny, and what the technical approach is going on, and what is the initiative that the Ministry of Energy and as well with the Ministry of Environmentals and are promoting in Peru with the support of the IADB as well, is that to focus on what are we doing good, what are the best practices we have currently, what are already happening, and most of them are not known. So and it's important to first have, and what is going on at this moment is there is a technical group with people from the private sector, from the academy, from the civil society, that are discussing what are the best practices for the mining, for the water in the value chain of the mining sector. Not only in the operation, but as well in the value chain, because it's necessary to have this perspective. So because this perspective is what affects directly or indirectly to the communities around. And this discussion is pretty interesting because you can see many projects that are developed in the areas of the mining activities that have a lot of value and bring a lot of value to the people in the area and engage them as well, and promote the not only the engagement but the commitment, which is something is really hard to find. You know, in Peru, these companies that are in charge of the payment for the sanitary and the water use in the population are in bankrupt, like 90% of them. So what does mean? That people doesn't pay for the maintenance and the operations of the system of the water, right? So and this is, it's not only Peru. You can see it in other countries in the region as well. But I mean, what tells us is that there's a challenge, and there's a challenge not only for not because of mining. This is a challenge for all of us. How the mining experience and the best practices can contribute to this, for example, this particular point, you know. So it's important to discuss from what have happened and define what are the factors, the key and the success factors that can bring to a solution. And after that, which is important, this is only to share the best practices. Then the interaction and interchange between these actors is also really, I mean, I am learning a lot in this discussion, right? I mean, I'm not an expert on water, but I can tell after this, I will have some knowledge of what's going on. And then the other thing is the lessons learned. So what we do well and what we could do better, right? So, and this is something that sometimes is under the floor. Nobody wants to talk about that. But it's necessary to talk about that, because then you learn a lot, and fixing these problems, then you can find solutions with innovation and disruption, which is something that you need to bring to the table, and you need to discuss and to you know, put in the middle of the room how the innovation, the disruption contributes to these solutions on water, on energy, hydrogen. I read the question that it was around what's going on about the hydrogen with being in the agreement that ENGIE has with Anglo American, and this is part of the solutions, right? And the other thing that I think it's important to do, and I hope this can be done in the following months, is to mobilize investments for concrete actions. Because the discussion is good, the discussion is you can learn a lot, but you have to bring some concrete actions, because people needs to see that there is something that is changing, and something that is impacting positively in their areas. And there you have the social discussion, which is one of the main topics to allow this happen. So from the technical to the social, and then to the concrete actions, and that's what's going on. And I hope in the following months that there will be some news from the government, and I hope next government, whatever it is, can take these actions in a continuity, because those are apolitical discussions. We are talking about development. We are talking about best practices. We are talking about lessons learned, and how to interchange these opportunities and create synergies between the different actors we have, and also the opportunities that could happen with investment from the private sector, from the multilaterals, from the public sector, which is one other challenge we have: how to coordinate these investments in order to avoid overlaps.
No, and you make a very interesting point, which is, I mean, it's the issue of the capacity of the mining sector to be a pioneer on elements such as, you know, green powering or the use of hydrogen for industrial solutions. And when I mentioned green powering, and we see a lot of situations where the mining company can be the off-taker for solar energy developments for the rest of the territory. All these are key elements, and maybe turning to Arturo, of showing how that mining sector could be better integrated with the question of sustainable development of territory. So I mean, on the elements of green powering, it is on climate change adaptation or mitigation, on the elements of social inclusion and governance, and can be on the capacity of integrating some best practices in the administrative or the entrepreneur layers of other sectors through the example of the mining sector. Maybe Arturo, can you maybe just elaborate on this and explain why it is so important for the mining sector to be part of that discussion on sustainability in Peru, and how that has been achieved, especially through Canadian companies?
Absolutely, Remy, that's a really important question. Here in Canada, we have learned like a long time ago that unless we take care of the environment or we take care of the community, that institution, let's say the mining, that won't be successful in the way we all want it. So I see many of these Canadian companies working in Peru that they do an effort on that. For example, there was one CEO, I won't name the company for confidential reasons, but the CEO took the time that instead of dealing with the union leaders of the community, to go and open an account for each of the members of the community, and then open a school that they can train these people. So all the profit that was supposed to be distributed to the community, it went really to each member of the community, not only the leaders, to the whole community. And the lessons, the teaching, the coaching, the classes, the training for the community, all those people were hired back in the company. So that company, from initial problems for the union leaders, after a certain period of months, all that disappeared. So that is to have a conscious about the social development. So you go the extra step. That CEO, obviously, the day he came back, I was talking about many other stories. And the other thing that I'm seeing right now in Peru, and we have that plenty in Canada, is that we are taking care of the environment. Tailings, for example, there are a few companies, mining companies in Peru, that they want to convert tailings into cement or concrete or asphalt. It's not new, has many, many years of exploration, but now they are trying to do more intensive. They are trying to combat the CO by planting trees. They are want to clean the water using nanotechnology. So all these new technologies to help to ensure the environment is protected and we don't damage the environment, I think that's a big step on the things that Peruvian mining companies are doing.
No, thank you. Maybe just to give an example of Canadian companies operating in Peru and trying to implement solutions in terms of climate change, or in terms of resilience of relaves or of tailings and others. Maybe Javier, can you maybe explain, what is how you integrate this into the Hudbay mineral strategy in Constancia, of trying to be a part of the solution, to be a pioneer towards solutions of whether it's on energy powering, or whether it's on social inclusion, or whether it is on the series of other projects to support entrepreneurship in the region. How have you done this in Chumbivilcas, and what are the lessons learned from the last few years operating there?
Thank you, Remy, for your question. Just a bit of context. I agree with what Arturo says. Let's incorporate new technologies like nanotechnologies and on the tailings management facilities, like we have modern construction procedures. We have very heavy instrumentation, so that ensure that the integrity of our assets is a world class. that we got a AA rating in our TSM. No Peruvian company has gotten that. Okay, but going a little bit further, because let's talk about social inclusion. Let's talk about social license to operate, because this is also in line with what Jose Carlos said. He has hit the nail on the head. Is we have to be innovative and disruptive, and part of this is extended even to the social aspect of the business. So a bit of context of what we have in Chumbivilcas, because this can be compared and escalated throughout the Peruvian territory, national territory. Okay, our problems are not different to other regions in Peru. Okay, so the region of Chumbivilcas, the province, is a clear example of how remote and how abandoned has been during decades. Okay, 51.4% of the population is malnourished. About 28% illiterate. You've been there, Remy.
Yeah.
Okay, you spent time there. Only 38% of the population has access to waste collection services. In other words, 62% of the garbage is either burned, dumped into the water sources, or buried. That poses an extreme risk to their health. 29 out of 1,000 kids, they die before reaching the age of 1. So those are devastating stats, okay? And we have learned that it is super important to address these needs from the beginning, okay? While recognizing the limited or the limitations of the private sector, okay, which under no circumstances replace the role of the government, okay? We need to be clear on this, okay? But we can use different mechanisms that are part of the existing legal system. It was mentioned before, such as public work taxes. That's a deduction instrument to promote the state intervention and the use of public funds, enabling the execution of large-scale projects where you can make the difference, such as the construction of roads, hospitals, okay, schools, telecommunications infrastructure, okay? So that's part of the innovation, okay? And another fundamental area to be addressed from the beginning is the development of the local population working skills. The implementation of effective training programs for the people of the direct and indirect area of influence of mining projects. Okay, why is this? Because it allows you to not outsource people from other parts. The talent and the knowledge stays there. Okay, and that's at the end will pay off in operations and financial efficiencies, as well as long-term development for the population. Okay, I think this is key. To me, and I can show, I have plenty of examples of what we've done in Chumbivilcas. For instance, we have sent delegations to Canada, okay, from leaders of the region in what we call the Exchange North-South program. So what we were trying to do is to build or to shape a vision. It's basically saying, you know, mining and the population can coexist. It could be a symbiotic relationship. Okay, so we want you this for Chumbivilcas as well, and for the other parts of Peru.
You're making a point which I think is essential. And before I turn to Ramon, maybe for the next question, is the fact that the socio-economic challenges in some of the region that are mining regions are daunting in terms of health issues or education issues. I wouldn't say the related absence of the state or the incapacity of the state to have strong institutions in some of those regions makes it that the mining actor is often seen and perceived as the one providing for the population or having the responsibility to provide for the population, while in truth is one economic actor as among many that needs to work with other institutional actors to work towards an inclusive development, especially in regions where there's so many expectations from populations and impatience resulting from this because they don't see their daily life change drastically from one day to the next, or following the arrival of a large investment. And maybe on that role of the state, which is sometimes facilitating, sometimes hampering the development of mining projects. I'd like maybe to turn to you, Ramon, in terms of trying to see of elements of licensing or validation of some of the processes. How could these go simpler, faster, and how could maybe the state have a stronger support of the mining companies to make sure that the development, the economic development trickles down eventually on social and environmental well-being for the populations?
Yes, I think that's a great question. I think that from my point of view, I think that the procedures are more complex because they integrate some elements of environmental issues and also social responsibility issues, and also a legitimate expectation of the stakeholders not to be affected by the mining activity. So I think that the procedures need to be more effective in terms of social participation and to bring some windows to the stakeholders to participate. I think that the procedure, in order to be more open, it should be more legitimate, and it won't be challenged in front of the judiciary, maybe action amparo, maybe another judicial actions to the project. I think that we need to refocus on the administrative procedure, and I like a lot the words from Javier and also from Jose Carlos. The administration needs to disrupt and to innovate. I think that the disruption needs to be applied to the administrative procedures, to sincere the terms of the legal terms of the procedure, and also to be more proactive. A lot of years, the administration, it's a bad word to be welcoming to the investment. I think that we need to return to that and innovate and disrupt in the procedures in order to make them more efficient, more adjusted to the terms and the conditions and all the legal binding pronunciations of the administration. I think that we need to focus more in the legal certainty of the procedures and to be more simple, more effective, but also more open in order to bring legitimation to this procedure and to avoid the challenge, procedure challenges within the judiciary. I think that is a way to do that. And also, I think that the mining licensing in general, in the extractive industries, is more complex due to the presence of a lot of legal entities from the state. As I said before, there's a lot of institutions that has to do with the mining sector. I think that we need to regain the role of the Ministry of Energy and Mines to coordinate with that in order to focus more in the effectiveness of the procedures instead of the actual situation, which I think that the ministry has lost the measure to coordinate with other authorities. I think the coordination is the way in order to assure legal certainty to the investment in mining.
No, I agree, and we're arriving really at the end of this webinar, because we said that we start at 6:30. So if you don't mind, I'll try to make the concluded words myself on this. I mean, this was a very large panel with many speakers, and the main reason is that there are so many elements that are to be addressed when we talk about the future of mining, the importance of mining towards building sustainable development in a territory, especially at a time where we're seeing those mining territories voting massively in favor of an anti-mining, candidate. That explains the need to be, more effective of working on the trickling down of the mining investment towards inclusive development in situations, as Javier very well explained, are very complex in terms of the limits of socioeconomic developments, with some key figures of young children dying before the age of 1 and other. And here is where we actually need to be very much working together, either in terms of technical groups, as Jose Carlos was mentioning, or using best practices from Canada that was underlined by Arturo, using also technology and the latest technology that is now available. I mean, I'm thinking about a community participation platforms. We have conversation with Hudbay on this, so that could be something very interesting to look at, to ensure that the communities see the positive elements of the mining investment, understand that indeed it is a midterm to long-term impact, sometimes in terms of the expectation for socioeconomic development, but that has the power, the mining sector has the power to be that leader in terms of change, whether it is on water management, whether it is on green powering of operation, like Jose Carlos was mentioning in the case of Moquegua and Cajamarca. All these need to be better explained, better socialize with communities, including them from the get-go, as Foromin Mazde is trying to do through universities, so that we can see that working together on cross-sectoral collaboration with different actors, with different sectors, with communities, we can engage with the basis of that elements of sustainable development according to the SDGs through mining investment, which remains the one sector that actually has strong investment in areas where there are daunting challenges. The mining sector is the one sector that will not delocalize at the first financial crisis, for example, because it has to be linked obviously with the resources, and therefore the capacities for using those investments towards trickling down towards an inclusive development are there. Now, the way to do this is really to engage better, build that trust with communities, engage other actors. We mentioned universities, we mentioned technical know-how, we mentioned north-south collaboration, whether it is from Canada or others. But there are some best practices that we're happy to share with anyone that are looking at investing in Peru or is running operations in Peru, to try to make sure that those gaps are limited, those gaps are reduced, and that we do not see the emergence of sometimes short-lived politicians that see the mining sector just as a way to build populistic demands, and actually when they arrive in office realize that this is probably the one sector that can help Peru achieve some of their objectives in terms of development, not only economic but also social and others. And we're seeing over the last few numbers, we have more confident with the capacity of a pro-market candidate to actually win this election. But even if that was the case, I mean, the current elections were, a sound recalling of the fact that we need to do a better work of engaging with the communities and socializing them the potentiality of positive change for themselves that they're not seeing today, and therefore they're voting for, they voted for Castillo, for example, in the first round. I know we went a little bit over time, so I apologize first of all for the panelists. I'm kind of cutting them short for their concluding work, but I want to more than anything say how grateful I was for all those people from different sectors and different perspectives to join us on this panel. So please, thank you very much for having been there. Do have a nice glass of wine now that the day is probably over for you, and I'll be looking forward to re-engaging with you in the next few weeks, and hopefully have good news on June 6th towards seeing the potential for further investments in Peru using the latest improvement in the sector. So thank you very much. Thank you to the attendance, and again, if any question is needed, we're here to share both recordings and best practices. So I appreciate you being there, and I wave you for sending you for a wonderful evening tonight. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you
for those attending.